Today, we're going to talk about how to become an estate agent in the UK. It's going to be especially important if you're looking to get in the industry or to land that first role. I'll share my own story about how I literally printed off my CV and took it from estate agent to estate agent until I finally got a job. Whether you're fresh out of school, coming for another career, or just looking for a bit of a change in your life, this video is going to answer the questions you need about getting into the world of estate agency. So I first got into estate agency when I was just turning 18 years old. And really embarrassingly, my mum saw an advert in the paper and recommended that I applied for the job. I did apply for it at the first interview, absolutely smashed it. Had the second interview, and I didn't get the job. But lots of things the interviewer talked to me about really resonated with me. The fact you deal with people every single day, it's a very competitive environment, and no days are exactly the same. There's always something going on. This really appealed to me. So what I did after not getting the job is I went home and I printed off my CV along with a covering letter. And this covering letter explained who I was, what I was about, and what sort of role I thought was absolutely perfect for. I then stapled this to my CV and put it through the front door of every single estate agent in the local area. As you might imagine, lots of agents didn't come back to me in any way, shape, or form, but luckily one did. I had an interview the next day and I started the day after that. And there started my career in the property world. And with this in mind, my advice to anybody who wants to get into the property world of estate agency is always to follow this exact same template. So first thing I would do is look on local job boards. There's lots of sites online that will show jobs that are available, and you can obviously apply directly through these. But there's lots of estate agents out there who will not be actually looking for people, but if the perfect person happened to drop in their lap, they would most certainly consider it. This is when going through the method of printing off your CV and a letter as well, and either taking it through in office hours if you're feeling super brave, or if you're a bit of a chicken like me, you can do it outside of office hours, put it to the post box, and fingers crossed you hear something back in the coming days. What you can also do, if you haven't heard anything back in a couple of days, you can also message those offices and just say, hey, just checking in, make sure you got my CV, was it of any interest at all? Because let's face it, you probably haven't got a job in the property world at the moment, so worst case scenario, they turn around and say no, and you're in exactly the same position you are at the moment. So let's look at the roles within an estate agency business. So in its purest form, estate agency is getting properties and matching them up with people who want to buy properties. It's pretty much as simple as that. But unfortunately, it really isn't. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it, and it takes an absolute lifetime to master the finer points of it. But that is effectively the main goal of most estate agencies. So within a functional estate agency business, there's generally lots of positions within that company which are trying to connect those people up. So to start off with, looking at sort of the beginner level with regard to an estate agency business, you get people like junior negotiators, for example, or some people just go straight in as a negotiator. Now, some of the roles this job will have will be things like carrying out viewings, for example. It will be getting feedback from people who have viewed the property, passing that across to the homeowner, and even sometimes offer negotiation. Though don't be surprised it takes a few weeks before you get given the offers to deal with, as you kind of build up for this over time, as you might imagine. This is generally the first entry point into most estate agency businesses. Now, if you're interested to find out what sort of ballpark the salaries fall into for this sort of job, as a junior negotiator slash negotiator in the estate agency office, as a rough idea of the sort of salaries you're looking at, so the lowest sort of end of it is for about £16,000. The higher end is more like £25,000. Then you need to keep in mind that obviously a lot of the estate agency world is commission based. So probably looking at sort of two-thirds, one-third, two-thirds being a basic salary and about a third of it coming from commission. This can be made up of things like selling properties, for example, but also might come through things like third-party suppliers, like selling financial services or solicitors. These all go towards your on-target earnings for yourself. Now, it goes without saying, these salaries are going to vary where you are in the country. If you're based in central London, then yes, you're going to be on the higher end of that spectrum. If you are based on the Isle of Wight, for example, then probably salaries aren't going to be that same sort of level. So there's a large regional element to this. There's a really nice, easy way to find out where it's looking at in your town. Go onto any job portal site. There'll be negotiator jobs on there, and it'll give you a really good idea where the sort of salary is for the area around you. Now, as you advance and get better at the job over time, there is a clear progression within the estate agency world. Usually when you start off as negotiator or junior negotiator, the next job role on top of that is a senior negotiator, which, as you might imagine, carries a bit more gravitas with it, also a slightly higher salary and usually more commission as well. Once you've mastered being a senior negotiator, you're usually moved on to a valuer within that business. So a valuer is someone that goes out and values properties, and their job is generally to get properties on the market that the rest of the team can sell behind them. Once you've mastered that role, you can then move on to things like branch manager, who, as you might imagine, overlooks the entire branch. And then beyond that, you've got regional slash area managers who look after multiple branches to make sure they are producing as much as they possibly can do. And to to give you a really good idea about the sort of size of the prize, when you get some of those higher jobs, you're certainly looking at six-figure salaries for a decent regional manager job, for example, overlooking a range of branches. So that give you a rough idea sort of where the starting point is and where the finishing point is for lots of estate agencies as well. So let's talk through about the qualifications and the skills you need to be an estate agent, because lots of industries are regulated and therefore you need to have a certain qualification to then become that job. Now, estate agency at the moment isn't one of those. So to be an estate agent, to list and sell someone's home, you can have absolutely zero qualifications whatsoever and can be completely compliant within the law. Now, down the line, there has been lots of rumblings about the regulation of property agents coming in, though that has not turned up yet. So at the moment, you need no qualifications whatsoever to be an estate agent. Obviously, this provides a low barrier of entry for people to join the estate agency world, which means that not only do you get really good people join the industry, also it gets people that maybe shouldn't be in the industry, just because there is that such a low barrier of entry to start things off. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't get qualifications though, because there's a huge range to know about the property world. And you want to make sure you are compliant and acting in your seller's best interest at any one time. So there's lots of qualifications you can do just to make sure you're in the best possible position and giving the best possible advice, not only to sellers who are selling with the estate agency you're working with, but also any buyers as well, just to make sure everyone is on the straight and narrow within the business. Now let's move on with regard to the skills you need within an estate agency business. Now, it goes without saying, you are going to be speaking to the public a lot. In fact, a large portion of your job is going to be booking viewings, carrying out viewings, chasing up viewings, dealing with offers. So dealing with the public 9 times out of 10. So therefore, you need to be a people person. It certainly helps. And if you're watching this and thinking, actually, I'm not too much of a people person at the moment, do not worry, you'll come out of your shell very quickly. So when I first started, I was very much a shy, reserved, 17/18 years old, would not say boo to a goose. And the best thing that happened to me is that I was carrying out 60, 70, 80 viewings every single week. So generally speaking, I was meeting 50 plus people every single week. It was like diving into the deep end. Your confidence level goes through the roof having to deal with that many people and meet that many new people every single week. So if you are watching this and thinking, actually, I'm a little bit more reserved, I'm a little bit more shy, do not worry. After your 20th, 30th, 50th, 100 viewing, you'll be very good at talking to people and your small talk game will just be absolutely on point. Now, what we've spoken about so far is very much the traditional route on estate agency. This is very much sort of high street estate agency, large corporate businesses. They have a large corporate ladder from junior negotiator through to regional manager, etc. And you'll fit in one of those boxes. Now, there is obviously another part of the conversation, which is independent estate agents and self-employed estate agents. So these are, think about an estate agent wearing all those caps within their business, and it's just one person. So you're the same person that values the property, you're also the same person that does the viewings, the offer negotiation, the sales progression. You are literally a one-stop business, usually just on your one desk. So you can go into this area as an estate agent with no experience. And in fact, some of my best success stories have been from agents who I've worked with over the years who had zero experience in estate agency and literally just knuckled down and got on with it really quickly. Because generally what they found is they didn't have lots of the hang-ups that come with working in an estate agency for a long time about what worked and what didn't work, and they just got on with it really quickly. So do not think for a second that you can't go into a brokerage or have your own estate agency business with zero experience, but it's going to be slightly more jumping in the deep end, both financially and professionally as well. Imagine if you've got a job as a junior negotiator, for example, there's going to be probably some training that goes with that job. It's also going to be a basic salary, for example. Whereas if you jump in the deep end and start your own estate agent, then chances are there's going to be no basic salary. In fact, it's the complete opposite. You're always paying to come to work because you've got subscriptions and money going out of your business. But the good news is, instead of getting a small percentage of your commission when you sell a property as an employed negotiator, when you are a self-employed member of the team, you'll find you get a huge amount of that percentage. So instead of like 5%, for example, might be more like 60, 70, 80% after your brokerage fee is taken out of it. So there's huge upside on that side, but also there is a risk involved with it. But if you're watching this thinking, oh my goodness, Chris, I've never been an estate agent before, can I make that work? Absolutely. People before you have gone into that industry and had a fantastic business they can be really proud of within 6 months to a year. So you can absolutely do it. As you might imagine, when it's your own business, the downside is that you don't get paid anything. In fact, the worst side is actually you're paying people out to come to work, as we've talked about. But the upside is limitless. You can sell as many properties as you possibly can do. So if you listed 100 properties over a year and you sold them all, congratulations, you are earning a significant amount of money. Whereas if you're on the negotiator role, even if you sold 100 properties, for example, your salary is somewhat capped because you've got that basic salary and a very small commission. So technically speaking, it's limitless commission, but in reality, you're not going to get paid for the full value for what you put in. That's why lots of people go down the self-employed or brokerage route, because they can sort of fulfill their full potential on that side. So let's talk through some tips and advice about being successful in the estate agency world. The most obvious one is work really hard. Like any job, you get out what you put in. So if you put the hours in and focus on the right things, by default, you should do really well. What I've always found it has always worked for myself really well is going above and beyond what was expected for me. So when I worked for an independent estate agent, for example, all the times I was promoted to the next role is when I was doing above what was expected in my current role. So for example, I remember when I was promoted from a negotiator to a senior negotiator, that was pretty much on the back of me going out and driving around all the building sites in the local area, getting all the contact details for the builders who are building all the properties in the local area, and then started phoning them to try and get them on the market. Now, my boss at the time would see that as going well above and beyond what was expected of me. That was more sort of a valuer / lister's job to do, but that was all helpful towards the business. So always try and go above and beyond what you're doing at the moment. And in the same breath, whether you decide to go employed or whether you decide to work in your own business, proactivity is your best friend. This is not a job where you sit around and wait for the phone to ring, unfortunately. This is a job where you need to be out and about and making it happen. People will just take the phone and they'll answer it. They will not do very well in a estate agency. Instead, it's your job to make that phone ring and to make deals happen. That's where really good negotiators and team members pay for themselves, and they are the ones that clearly get promoted quite quickly because they've shown they've got the desire to do better rather than just doing the bare minimum, taking the basic salary and then going home at 4 o'clock. Now, undoubtedly, there is a lot to learn in a estate agency. And for honesty, I don't think I'd have a job if there wasn't lots to learn. It's one of those industries, though, you can get the gist of it very quickly. So within a couple of weeks of working in an estate agency business, you'll get the hang of not only the lingo, the setup, how everything works, timescales, the do's, the don'ts, for example. So you'll get your head around it very quickly. But do not be surprised for the first couple of weeks if you wonder what on earth everyone is talking about. I can still remember my first meeting I had in the estate agency, and honestly, I understood about a quarter of it. You know, chain this, fall through that, buyer this, vendor that. I had no idea what they're talking about. But within 2 or 3 weeks, I'd picked it up really quickly and I knew my stuff. It still takes a lifetime to master, but you know the bit you need to know very quickly in that sort of situation. So if you've got no experience, do not be scared off at this stage. Okay, so that should hopefully give you a really good idea about how to get started in the world of estate agency, what to expect, and what the sort of money and progression should look like from there. If you're ready to take the next step in your own estate agency business, you can grab a free copy of my best-selling book, Your First £100,000 Estate Agency, which is all designed about building your own £100,000 estate agency, as if by magic. If you want to grab a copy of it, pop over to Instagram. The link's just below this video. DM us the word book over on there and it'll come straight across yourself. Hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you on the next one.